they're approaching a crossroads that they haven't really had in this whole golden era, this run that they've had, and it'll be fascinating to see if they do anything this winter to, I don't want to say alleviate that crossroads, but start to address it head on.
Setup Nation, what's up? We've got Chandler Rome today, the Astros beat reporter for The Athletic, talking here on Rumor Has It, and we're talking all things Houston Astros. Chandler, excited to have you on and talk a little bit about what should be a pretty interesting offseason for the Astros.
Yeah, maybe not in terms of transactions. I don't think, this team returns 8 of their 9 everyday position players from last year, return its entire rotation, return its setup man and closer. So there's not much that needs to be done, but I think when you kind of start to look at it, they're approaching a crossroads just in their franchise. They've got a couple guys, Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman are entering the final year of their contracts. Framber Valdez and Kyle Tucker will be free agents after 2025. It's highly unlikely that they re-sign. Well, it's virtually impossible that they're going to re-sign all 4 of them. I would, if I was a betting man, I'd probably say they only re-sign one of them. So
Yeah.
they don't have a good farm system. There's just some things that they're approaching a crossroads that they haven't really had in this whole golden era, this run that they've had, and it'll be fascinating to see if they do anything this winter to, I don't want to say alleviate that crossroads, but start to address it head on.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it on the head. 6 of the last 7 years, they were the AL West champs, 7 straight championship appearances in the playoffs. And now it's kind of like, yeah, they probably have another shot to do that. But beyond that, right, third, pretty much ranked dead last, according to MLB.com, for that farm system. So do you see them maybe start getting rid of pieces a year early, like Bregman keeps on coming up in trade talks, in order to bolster that farm system?
Yeah. I mean, my general rule of thumb, just with every front office in the winter, is you eliminate nothing and you consider everything. It would be negligent for the Astros if teams are calling them about Alex Bregman or Framber Valdez or Kyle Tucker. It would be negligent for them not to listen. That is a front office's foremost responsibility, is to be open to anything. I don't envision any of them getting traded, just solely because Jim Crane, and by extension everyone that works under him, like the expectation is that they want to contend for a World Series in 2024.
Okay.
That we just told you that they're returning everyone basically from a team that was a win away, from getting to another World Series. They've been to 7 straight ALCSs. They are not looking to take a step back in 2024. If you trade Alex Bregman, you cannot achieve that championship contention without him. They have no one in their farm system to replace him. If their farm system has something, it has pitching depth. Now, is it elite pitching depth? No. Is it guys you're seeing in top 100 prospect ratings? No. But they've got guys that they can turn to. You saw it last year with JP France, who came out of nowhere and threw 150 really good innings at the big league level. Hunter Brown last year. Like they've got depth there. They have no position player depth in their minor league system. They have no one ready to step in at third base and replace Alex Bregman, who was a 5-win player last year. Kyle Tucker, they don't have anyone that can step in. He led the team in WAR. He finished 5th in American League MVP voting. I would venture to say it would be borderline impossible for them to contend for a World Series if either Alex Bregman or Kyle Tucker is not on the 2024 team.
Well, let's play a little scenario here. It's close to the All-Star break. This team's around 500. They're not really in the playoff picture per se, maybe right around the third in the AL West. At that point, do you think Jim Crane and Dana Brown say, hey, let's hope we turn it around this second half? Or do you see them start making some of these moves like the Bregmans and the Tuckers and the Valdezes?
I would probably say the former. Just, we believe in the guys. We believe in this team. Let's hope they can flip a switch and turn it on, because that's what this team kind of does.
Yeah.
if you followed this team last year, they did not play particularly well for long stretches of the season. And then when September rolled around and it was like, oh, hey, the division's still within grasp, they turned it on and played elite. And then they went in the playoffs and they turned it on and played elite. Like that's what they do. Like they kind of rise and to the occasion better than any team I've really ever seen. So there would be some merit to doing that. So like if you get to the All-Star break and you're either a couple games out, if you're not performing well, like there would be merit to just saying, hey, like let's wait, but if it's a situation where just a catastrophe has happened and they're under 500 or they're not playing well and scuffling along, then they would have to consider it because sustainability is the buzzword, right? Like every franchise wants to be sustainable. Every championship window, you want to be sustainable. Like to promote that sustainability and to keep that sustainability within reach, it would behoove them to at least consider it because there's a very, very, very remote chance that they re-sign Alex Bregman. Like I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Kyle Tucker is going to re-sign here. I don't think they want to extend Framber Valdez. So, I mean, at some point, like you have to decide: is it worth just getting the qualifying offer draft pick for those guys, or do you want something more? And these are decisions that, for the most part, they've never really had to seriously consider. There was some rumors at the 2019 winter meetings, and I actually wrote about this. That there were some rumors at the 2019 winter meetings they were entertaining offers for Carlos Correa, and it was a similar situation where they kind of knew they weren't going to re-sign him. The farm system was nowhere near as bad as it is now, but still, they needed to restock a little bit, and they had some payroll problems. They wanted to get under the salary, the CBT a little bit, and they fielded some offers. But at the end of the day, Jeff Luhnow said at the winter meetings, Carlos Correa is an Astro, and we're not going to trade him. I have a feeling that Dana Brown's going to be asked some very similar questions this week in Nashville about Alex Bregman, and I think that the parallels there are easy to see. That they have considered this before, but they've never actually pulled the trigger.
So, we're hearing that Jim Crane put kind of a cap on what Dana Brown is going to be able to do in regards to additional money, funds going towards new guys. First of all, why do you think Crane is doing that, and how does that impact Dana Brown this offseason?
Well, Dana Brown came out and said at the GM meetings that they don't have a ton of financial flexibility. That's on the record. He said that, and you look at where they are in relation to the first luxury tax. Again, there's about 5 or 6 websites and places that tabulate payrolls and that approximate where the Astros are, and they're all different. So you don't want to say that they're like, basically, if you look at all those approximations, they're either at the first threshold already or have already exceeded it. So they don't have a ton of room. They need to sign a couple of relievers, and they need to sign maybe maybe a starter, maybe a left-handed outfield bat, and certainly a backup catcher. So they've got stuff to do. Jim Crane's only exceeded the competitive balance tax once in his ownership tenure, and that was after they traded for Zach Greinke in 2019 and took on that huge contract, and that put them over the CBT. So there is precedent. He's done it before. He is reluctant to do it again, but from what I understand, it's been communicated to a lot of people that he will go over. Like this is not a situation where there's an edict to cut payroll, an edict to stay under. But he only wants to go over for the right sort of thing, like the Greinke deal in 2019. Like they thought they needed that to finish off a World Series championship caliber team, and they were right, and they got it done. So I think it would certainly have to be for something of that ilk, like something like a slam dunk, like if they can get like an elite standout reliever, or if they can get a high-end starting pitcher to come in, and like I think that would happen. But I certainly don't think it's something that Jim Crane's looking to do. I don't think he wants to go over the competitive balance tax, but I think all things equal, if this team has a chance to win, and if this team has a chance to contend for a World Series, Jim Crane loves winning. He loves being aggressive. You saw it at the deadline last year with Verlander. They'll do it, and they'll go over the CBT. But as of right now, I don't get the sense that that's something that he's dying to do.
So it feels like the biggest need this offseason, we're seeing, Hector Neris is out, Ryan Stanek is out, unless somehow the Astros end up re-signing them. The bullpen is pretty depleted at this point. Where do you think they go to find some arms to replace those three guys?
You know, you say it's depleted, but they do return Brian Abreu, who may be the best reliever in baseball that no one
Yep.
talks about, and Brian Presley, who is quietly turned himself into one of the greatest closers of certainly this era. Again, two guys that don't get talked about a ton that are really, really good, and so they return. So you've got a good core. You've got Kendall Graveman coming back. They need Rafael Montero to find some sort of continuity, especially with that contract that no one will take on. But yeah, they're losing 185 innings combined from Phil Maton, Ryan Stanek, and Hector Neris. So they need volume. They need bodies that can come in here and kind of absorb those innings. I think they are interested in re-signing Hector Neris, but Neris is going to look at the Rafael Montero contract that Jim Crane gave out, the 3-year, $34.5 million contract to a guy that had one good major league season. And Hector Neris is going to be like, well, I want that. And I don't know that the Astros can do that. So they may have to kind of have a couple Astros specials where they go out and find a guy that no one they bring a guy in and change his pitch repertoire, change what he throws, change the shape of his pitches, and turn him into something elite. They did that with Presley. They've done that with a ton of pitchers in the past. Will Harris, Colin McHugh, guys like that. So, I think they are trying to get in that big game hunting leverage reliever market, but at the price points that we've seen so far with guys like Emilio Pagan, Reynaldo Lopez, like I don't know that they can play in that ballpark. So they may have to get creative. They may have to, get some guys that maybe aren't on, normal baseball fans' radar, some lesser known guys, and work their magic, sprinkle their dust on them, and turn them into something elite. Because like we said, they're not playing with a ton of money right now.
The starting pitching last year was really impacted by injuries. Is the hope just that everyone comes back healthy, or is there going to be any looks in the open market or maybe even via a trade for a starting pitcher?
Well, it's odd. I criticized them pretty heavily last year for not going after for not getting some depth last year in the rotation, because they didn't have a general manager for 2 months, and I guess they presumed that they did have a surplus, and they presumed that everything was just going to hold steady, and that's foolish. And it forced them to go get Justin Verlander at the deadline because they needed him, and they ignored the starting pitching market. But it's funny. I wrote a story this morning that speculated that in an analysis sort of way, that if they're going to trade one of these guys coming up on one of those four guys we talked about, maybe Framber Valdez makes the most sense. Just given, what they could get for him in this market. This market is obviously, everyone wants starting pitching. The demand is dwarfing the supply. So if you put him out there as available, who knows what you could get. You could really help, a lot of the issues that we've talked about that they have. Now they can do that. They can listen on Fromber, and if it's something manifests and they trade him, they can do two things at once. You can be active in the starting pitching market, trying to acquire a new starter, and also, get rid of, and also, maybe consider trading Fromber. So I think regardless, I think they do need to go find an innings eater veteran sort of, back end 4 or 5 starter, that you give an incentive laden deal to, and see what you got. Because look, I think they like the depth that they have. They have Verlander, but he's 41 years old. I never question any. I mean, he's a unicorn, so doubting him feels foolish. But still, time comes for us all, and age comes for us all. Christian Javier did not have the season last year that I think they were anticipating, especially given the extension they gave him. Him taking the step and really turning it around and becoming more like 2021, 2022 Christian Javier would really help. And they're going to get Luis Garcia and Lance McCullers Jr. back at some point in the mid season, like around maybe after the All-Star break. Garcia had Tommy John surgery last year. McCullers had flexor tendon surgery. So again, you don't know what you're going to get out of them, but they'll be back. They'll be bodies. And they saw Hunter Brown and JP France pitch well last year. They've got a couple of prospects that they like. Spencer Arrighetti's a guy to keep your eye on as a prospect that can maybe come up and help them out. So yes, I think they need some insurance. I think they need some more established depth, but at the same time, I'm also the one that's out here writing, hey, like maybe they should look at trading Framber Valdez. That makes a lot of sense. So I don't want it to act like I'm speaking out of two sides of my mouth, because I think they can do both of these things. I don't think there's a mutually exclusive, you have to do this and you can't do this. Like they can do both things at once.
Hey, that's what the offseason's all about, playing both sides of the coin, because you never know what's really going to happen and what the opening day roster really is going to look like. Last piece of this is the outfield. Kyle Tucker feels like kind of the only lock out there. What do you see the outfield looking like when we open the season in late March?
Well, I think certainly Chas McCormick has done enough to be the everyday center fielder. As I reported pretty thoroughly last year, and was now pretty widely known that Dusty Baker was not a fan of Chas McCormick's. He just didn't, for whatever reason, just thought that he was not an everyday player, did not want to play him every day. I think that's going to change with a new regime in, with certainly, Dana Brown was a guy that really wanted Chas McCormick to play every day. Joe Espada kind of the same way. So I think Chas McCormick has done enough to really solidify that center field job. And then in left, Yordan Alvarez wants to play a lot in left field. I do wonder, however, how much they want him out there just to protect himself from injury. You saw last year he had that scary dive against the Yankees at Minute Maid Park. I mean, he didn't end up going on the IL or anything, but that's kind of the fear. If you lose him, you are completely screwed, just because of, he's one of the two or three best hitters in the big leagues. So he's going to play some out there. Dana Brown seemed pretty comfortable with what they had internally in the outfield. When you look at their roster, it would scream for maybe a veteran left-handed hitting outfielder, bench bat sort of guy to platoon and not even platoon, like timeshare in left field with Alvarez. If they don't go that route, they could play Chas McCormick in left and then play Jake Myers or Mauricio Dubon in center. They've got a couple of outfield prospects. If there's one position in their farm system on the position player side that they feel pretty good about, it is outfield. They added a guy named Kennedy Corona to their 40-man roster to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. Speedy, great defensive first center fielder. Would not be surprised if he gets a look at some point this year. Joey Loperfido really blew up last year, went to AAA, mashed. So maybe that's the guy that they look at. Jacob Melton, their former second-round pick from Oregon State, he made it to AAA at the end of the season. So, they've got some young guys that they like and they feel good about. But I do think they could benefit from just maybe a veteran guy to bring in some more modicum of certainty instead of, maybe rolling out a bunch of prospects to give them their first try.
All right, Chandler. Well, last question here. Dusty retires. Joe Espada is in. Was the bench coach for a bit over there with the Astros. Do you think there's any adjustment period for the players? Or you think because he's being promoted, that should be a pretty smooth and seamless transition?
It should be a pretty smooth transition, but I don't think we can also overlook the some of the pitfalls that first time managers have. Joe Espada has never managed in affiliated ball. He's managed a few years in the Puerto Rican Winter League, but he's never managed a minor league team. He's never managed a major league team. And there is inherently, when you go from the right-hand man to the man in charge, there's inherently going to be some things you have to work through, just some stuff that he never encountered as a bench coach. And he'll have that, but I do think it's going to help him that he knows these guys. He's been around. He's worked under two very, very different with the Astros. He's worked under two very different styles of a manager in Dusty Baker and AJ Hinch. So I think he's been trained well. I think he's prepared for this job. And I think certainly he was the right call for the Astros just because they want to, they wanted to maintain as much continuity as possible. But I think it'd be foolish to just presume that because he's been here for 6 years, he's going to have it all figured out as a first-time manager. No, there's going to be things there's going to be things that he's never encountered before that he's going to have to confront. And I think Joe is he's prepared for this though. Like, he interviewed so many times for other managerial jobs, didn't get them. He's probably thought long and hard about how he's going to run his clubhouse, how he's going to run his team. He's probably had everything planned out for a while, just given all these interviews he's been on. Now it's time for him to put it into practice in a place where he is really familiar.
All right, Chandler, did we touch on everything, or is there anything I didn't ask that you think we're going to need to keep an eye out for the last few months of this offseason?
I think we've pretty much touched everything. Like I said, I think obviously the trade possibilities are interesting, especially with the names that have been put out there. But I would be surprised if that's how it goes down, just because Jim Crane's never done anything like that. So I wouldn't count on it, but certainly it's something interesting to monitor.
Okay, guys, go check out Chandler Rome with The Athletic on Twitter if you want to get all the up-to-date updates on the Astros this offseason for the MLB Hot Stove. Chandler, thank you so much for jumping on here for another episode of Rumor Has It with The Setup Man. I appreciate you.
Thank you.